Let me know when you can see my screen, Steve.
Yep, we can see your screen, Jarman. Might just wait for a second just before we start.
Too easy.
There's a few more people joining in.
And the audio quality is okay, and you can see me okay, everything's all right?
Yep, perfect.
Yep.
So I think we'll get started today. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Middleton Group's first installment of the Masterclass. This is a series which will see some of our most talented engineers conduct online surveys, online presentations on a variety of specialist topics over the coming months. This week's presentation will be conducted by one of our senior power engineers, Jarman Stevens, who will be presenting on workplace productivity, a millennial's journey, you could call it. The presentation will run for approximately 20 minutes, 30 minutes, with about 10 minutes for questions at the end. Just some conference room housekeeping, if you like. Can I please ask for everyone to keep their microphones on mute unless you're speaking? If you do have any urgent questions during the presentation, you can take advantage of Zoom's raise your hand feature, which is just found in the chat of the screen, it should be, or in the participants section on the bottom of your screen. So if you click on participants, you can raise your hand and either myself or Jarman will get to your question. If your question is not too urgent, you can post it in the chat group, or you can wait till the end for questions. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Jarman. And just before we finish, I'll post a quick survey at the end just to see what everyone thought of the session. If you could give us some feedback, we'll greatly appreciate it, and we'll be able to bring you better content in future. But let's get ready for this excellent presentation by Jarman Stevens. Thanks, Jarman.
Thanks, Steve. So I thought the title of the presentation was a little bit of a gag, but they used it. So anyway, here's a millennial's journey. All right. So who am I? My name is Jarman Stevens. I'm a senior power engineer at Middleton. Previously worked at ABB in traction power electronics and substation design. So this presentation pack, I guess, began as showing a few people little tips and tricks around the office to help them increase their workplace productivity. And eventually it formed into a formal internal presentation for the team on workplace productivity, but also on my story of how I work. Because if you've seen me in the office, I do have a few quirks. Anyway, what is the problem here? So people are working longer than their 7.6 hours per day or 8 hours per day, whatever it is, meaning less time for Xbox or playing with the kids or playing Xbox with the kids. For projects, there's always pressure to spend less time on projects to maintain tight margins or tight deadlines, and there might be reduced output quality, right? For clients, there's heavy market competition to do more with less. So if you can work 10% more productively, you could reduce your costs, win more jobs, and better serve the clients in the industry, right? And then for growth, if you don't have any spare time throughout the day to think outside the box, it's going to be very hard to implement process changes, which will help in the future. And often having a little spare time can create a lot of spare time. So this is framing the problem and where workplace productivity could be one of those solutions, not necessarily a silver bullet, but could help. And a quick preface is, as I said, this presentation is kind of my journey and covers some low-hanging fruit, I would say, for people who have large gains to be made on workplace productivity. So if it seems rudimentary or you've heard other things, please no insult taken if it's not for you. Anyway, I split the training into two sections, kind of a lecture style, which is the do more actual work, do less actual work, and some Q&A. And then this was, I guess, more for the internal, but it could still be applicable if you're playing around, because we're working from home. If you're playing around, I could actually give some individual help or answer some individual questions. And and probably here the term actual work probably is a bit harder to define, but you create your own definition on that. I don't have a specific definition. You might say it's, I don't know, billable work if you're a consultant, work you're billing to clients, but I don't know, maybe it's easy to picture examples that aren't actual work. You know, I wouldn't qualify searching for an email that you can't find for 20 minutes as actual productive work, or sitting in a useless meeting as actual productive work. So anyway, use your own definition. But yes, the first part is talking about doing more actual work. So increasing that percentage of time of your day that you're actually doing productive. Then once you've done that, and now a good percentage of your day is doing productive work, then do less actual work. So how can you decrease the time it takes you to complete certain tasks? Okay? So those are the two things. And a special note here for the COVID-19 stuff. There was an interesting podcast I listened to with Matt Mullenweg, who's the CEO. He helps put together WordPress, which talks about the 5 levels of remote work. I don't know, I thought it was a nice summary of a lot of topics. Anyway, it's a special note. Go check it out. Okay, so do more actual work. Right, so time tracking was a big one for me. So let's describe the problem here. So there's a limited knowledge of where people's time goes throughout the day. That's a common thing to say, where did this day go, right? Well, I implore you, try it for one day where you have a stopwatch. And I've given some examples on the right, nothing fancy. You know, I use Google Stopwatch, the one on the bottom right. And you, with your own definition of what actual work is, okay, every time that if someone asks you how your weekend was, or you go for a short walk, or you get a coffee, stop the timer, okay? And get to the end of the day and see how much actual work you've done under your own definition, okay? So I think you'll be very surprised. People do too much multitasking. So having read one book on neuroscience and behavioral economics, you can call me Dr. Stevens. And as Middleton Group's resident neuroscientist, I would recommend spending less time multitasking to be at the best of your ability. So every time you begin a new task, you have to remember where you left off, what you were thinking at that time, and just a back of the hand calculation. If it takes you 5 minutes to get back into a task and you change tasks 6 times per day, you've lost 30 minutes in your day. And again, I wouldn't call that actual work if you find where you were sitting and setting up all your tabs again and all that kind of stuff, right? And another one is not enough regular breaks. So to get more productive work, you really need to take breaks. The human brain can't concentrate for 8 hours in a row, right? When working under a stopwatch, although sometimes it can give you PTSD to high school shitty jobs where the manager timed the toilet break or coffee break. This is not the idea, right? It's a tool for you. So it's not a stopwatch that your manager should see. It's a tool to help you. And in fact, it forces me to take regular breaks because I now know exactly how long I've been working since the last time. And it's actually, I haven't done any psychological experiment on this, but it's quite interesting. When I'm feeling very motivated, I count up with a stopwatch. And when I'm struggling a bit, I count down. I don't know what that says about me. Anyway, unless I'm really in the zone, I get prompted, every hour I take a short break, go stretch my legs, do some squats, whatever it is, okay? So we've talked about the problem. Look, this is the solution I use. I would implore you to try it at least for once. And then some additional benefits here. So if you do timesheets, this makes it the easiest thing in the world, right? Because I have my timesheet open my stopwatch. And as soon as I finish a task, I just write down how long it took me. So it's no longer a problem for me. And then another great one is if you have a good understanding of how long things take you, if someone asks you how long to do a task, you know exactly how long it will take. And for tenders, right, you have a good understanding of how long these tasks take you. So yeah, time tracking and understanding all that kind of stuff is really, really useful, in my opinion. All right. Number 2, communication and visibility. So again, let's define the problem. So time-consuming and repetitive progress updates. So For projects, the project manager may want a quick update on how you're progressing on a certain task. And because usually they're unable to see the great work that you've done. And they will need to call you and ask about the tasks you're currently working on, the progress, any historic challenges, et cetera, right? But if this data can all be stored in one place, then the project manager should be able to just view project progress at the click of a button. And that time is now just gone, okay? Saved. And then another classic one is to-do lists which are not aligned in a team. So a classic thing, you know, you all go to a meeting and everyone writes their own meeting minutes on their own notepad. That's insane, right? You're all going to have different interpretations of the meeting. You'll have different interpretations of what the actual items are, okay? So if you're not working in, without using the buzzword, the cloud, but I'll use the buzzword, the cloud, then task deliverables, deadline dates, or just how you interpret a problem are all different. So make sure it's in a place where everyone can see it. Another classic one is limited knowledge transfer. So this is a really big problem, right? If everyone has their own personal notes, which no one can really access, it's really difficult for younger engineers to really understand the process behind something. So a really good example in my workplace is you might say to a younger engineer, hey, here's a previous report that we delivered on this topic. Go over, read and see how it's done. Now they can see the final polished output. That's great. But it's hopefully going to be as concise as possible. And where's all the tinkering, right, to get there? So if all the calculations, the troubleshooting, all of that kind of stuff, where are the notes? We don't really have that. And then handover process, right? We have awful handovers in the workplace. So there's massive loss of productivity just trying to pick up a project and find out where everything is stored, whether it's in their own personal inbox or their own hard drive or awful things like that. So the solution is make 99% of company communication and information publicly available to employees. For every project, everything, right? And this is becoming more and more important now, the working remotely. But I've given two examples here. So this is a screenshot, you know, with the meeting minutes blacked out, but this is how I structure projects when I'm running them. So all internal meeting minutes are stored in one place in OneNote. And you don't have to use OneNote. I'm not a Microsoft fanboy. It's what we use, but anything similar is totally fine. But everyone can come in. There's one source of truth. And below is our CRM tool. So a customer relationship management tool. Again, it's a single source of truth, but it's public to everyone, okay? So, and yes, there are exceptions. You know, you may not want to talk about salary in a public forum or personal HR issues, but this has to be 1 or 2% of company communication. So make everything else publicly available. So additional benefits, yeah, for auditing. Well, that's it. And then synced data. So as soon as you start moving things off personal inboxes and into shared locations, it means you can access it from everywhere. And that's just a massive plus. So the fact that we implemented a lot of these changes at Middleton Group meant working from home felt far less uncomfortable than a lot of other companies. We already stored meeting minutes in common locations. We already had a cloud-based CRM service. So yeah, spend less of your time looking for emails and more time doing work. This is a specific item, but I think it deserves its own slide, is better to-do lists. So the generic term is a Kanban board. But anyway, let's frame the problem. So what is the problem? To-do lists are often really unclear. Okay, how often have you been delegated a task and you have no idea what you should be doing or what success looks like for that task or project? Okay, or even the person delegating the task actually still also has no idea what you should be doing or what success looks like. So this is just wasted time trying to interpret what people meant. You sitting there for 30 minutes thinking, what did they mean by this? Yeah. So this is a huge problem, right? So having tasks like this, you're forced to write it out. Aside from all the benefits of being publicly available, you're prompted for things, right? You're just prompted to say, okay, what's the due date? You have to fill this out. Who's doing it? Yeah. The description, the little dot points on there's all these things that you're prompted to set it up, right? In the buckets up here, you can see you can filter. I often create buckets for how long I expect this task to take. Okay? So if you see this task and the person delegating it to you said, yeah, it should take you a day, right? And you're thinking there's no way this will take, I can finish this in a day. That's immediately a prompt to go speak to them. And you probably have the wrong understanding of what success looks like. So just like you know that a successful meeting has a good agenda, right? Where you spend a couple minutes, 1 or 2 minutes or less, just writing out the agenda, defining what success looks like in that meeting. Well, the same thing applies to delegating tasks. Who should be doing it? What are the deliverables? When is it due? Is it a high priority? So just to ensure that everyone's on the same page. It means way less back and forth to clarify these things. And again, that's just reducing the amount, increasing the percentage of actual work when you're doing the task. And a little anecdote. So it's probably a good time to reflect and say, yes, this is all good and well for white collar desk jockeys, but I mainly work on site. This isn't applicable for me. Well, my anecdote is I was doing substation design and a CAN bed board was instrumental. So I was doing brownfield design. So there are a lot of little tasks. Okay, and I created these little tasks of everything that need to be done on site. As the project manager and designer. And it was wonderful. The foreman had a bucket of tasks that needed to be done. Run this cable from here to here, install this device, whatever it was, right? With subtasks of everything I broke down. And it wasn't perfect. It was the first time I tried it for site, but by God, it was better than, just having a kind of a whiteboard on site, which was a lot of the time, right? So I would love to do this again in the future. And I remember there were some slick days where I wouldn't be on site. I had to be somewhere else, but I had my mobile notification set up and I would get ping saying, okay, run the cable from this board to this board has been picked up by person X. Perfect. They've started. Great. This task has been done. I was just getting a news feed of what was happening on site as I could track progress, right? People could post comments and I could reply to them in real time. So additionally on site, a lot of electricians don't have laptops and don't have company issued laptops, but they sure do have mobile phones. So thinking of the communication medium and to-do list medium, right? If you send them an email and say, hey, can you start on X, Y, and Z? What are you expecting them to do? Get their phone out, kind of awfully go through it and write yes, no next to certain tasks? It's awful, right? It's bad. It's not slick and people don't want to do it. If you have a slick mobile app, which they can drag and drop tasks from to do, to doing, to done, and they can tick things with their fingers as they do it, you're going to get much larger buy-in and better data quality. So many benefits. And a big one for me that's coming up is possibility for resource tracking. So you can do some filters and you can start to see, well, okay, person X has 99 tasks assigned to them and person Y has 4. Let's try and even up that load. But without a better to-do list feature, you can't do that. All right. Next, so meetings, again, very specific. I won't touch on it too much. There's a whole bunch of information on this, but very quickly, there's no clear purpose. Sorry, framing the problem again, no clear purpose, too many people in the meeting, and no prep for the meeting. And I know this is obvious, and it'll probably get a smile usually because people know they've sat through utterly useless meetings, but why do we keep putting up with it? And just again, personal anecdote, in a time when I was really busy and working a lot of overtime, if I received a calendar invitation that didn't have a clear agenda, I would just decline the meeting and just say, why, right? And I thought if the person on the other end writing the calendar invitation couldn't spare 1 to 2 minutes, then I couldn't spare 1 hour of my time. So let's kind of kick back on the status quo here, right? So anyway, some ideas. Does it really need to be a meeting? So I would say 50% or more of meetings don't. Create a specific agenda. Personal anecdote from me is I tend to write agendas as questions now. I think that's really, really useful. I can't solve this myself. I can't solve this with a one-on-one communication, an email, a chat, or a phone call with someone else. I need a meeting to answer these questions, right? And a benefit I like about writing agenda items framed as questions is if someone already has the answer, they just write you the answer and then say, sweet, I don't need to attend. Right? So it may not need a discussion. Invite the bare minimum of people. 2 to 3 people is fine for 90% of meetings. Default 15 minutes is my preference. I'm trying to push Middleton Group to do that. And do the prep, right? Another classic example would be you need to do 30 minutes of prep for a meeting, and say you go through 30 minutes, you form your opinion, you mull over it at home during the week, and on the Friday you have the meeting. Say Monday it was got the invitation, and the meeting on Friday takes 10 minutes. Done. Scenario 2, you didn't do the prep. You get there, you walk in. It's the first time you've seen a topic. You're stressed because you feel under time pressure now. You feel kind of bad because you should have done the prep. Your response is probably reactionary because you're seeing it for the first time, so it's not your best thoughts. You're probably going to be more hostile. There's a lot of disadvantages here. That meeting is probably not going to go for 10 minutes. It's probably going to go for an hour, and you're probably not going to make a decision because you want to go ahead and mull over it. So do the prep. If you can't do the prep, change the meeting. Cool. So anyway, there's lots and lots of information you can find in meetings, but still, this is the low-hanging fruit. All right, so recap. We talked about doing more actual work, right? So we've framed trying to get that percentage of you doing productive work during the day, okay? So again, I implore you, try the stopwatch. I think you'll love it. So now, say we've reached nirvana, okay? So all of your work now is you have a beautiful Kanban board, you have tasks perfectly delegated to, you can perfectly delegate tasks to other people, okay? And you just pick them up from a bucket of to do, right? And that's how you, and it's all prioritized for you, right? You know what you need to work on. So we're in nirvana, we're sitting in nirvana now. So you pick up a task, okay? And someone says, I think it'll take you 5 days, right? And you say, screw you, I can do it in 3. This is the next section, okay? Do less actual work. So there's lots of different ways to save time. Again, this is my journey, but a good one for me is auto hotkey. I really like. So it's free and open source. Go download it. It's awesome. If you work on Windows, might be on Mac now, but we'll need to check. So I have a whole bunch of hotkeys for things I type very frequently. For example, if I hold Control Alt and the Windows key and press M, it writes Middleton Group. If I do Control Alt Windows key and R, it writes my role, Senior Power Engineer, my mobile, my email, project numbers that I'm working on. Okay? It's all very common stuff. Steve Smith will always laugh at this one, but a lot of my emails are auto hotkeys. Like it'll say that at the start of an email, hi, etc. Continuing on from our conversation, or kind regards, I look forward to hearing from you. All of these things are hotkeyed in. Now, you think this might be just seconds, and yeah, this is saving me seconds a day, but over a year it can add up. But there's some smarter things you can do as well, right? So this software just automates dumb mouse clicks and keyboard strokes. Okay. Now I'll paint a scenario here, which I've had. Okay, I have a piece of software, and I can't access the back end of that software. Think of really bad software like SAP, right? Real bad. Sorry if there's anyone who works for SAP. But a lot of the front end blows. So what if you had to, for SAP, write out a bunch of monkey say monkey do codes every time you raise a purchase order? Okay? And every time it takes you 5 minutes to fill out all these codes, and you kind of forget what they are, and you have to look back. Well, what if you sent you had a hotkey set up that it would fill it out for you? It would write the number, send 2 tabs, write the number, send 2 tabs, write the name, send 2 tabs, and you could send this instruction and it would fill out that sheet for you. So auto hotkey can be really, really good for software you can't get in the back end and automate it, but you can just automate the front end. So, and I've even done things where there's 2 pieces of software and I wanted to do some simple communication between them, but it would have taken me ages to work it out in the back end. But what did? I just automated mouse clicks. I set the screens up side by side and then just automated mouse clicks between the 2 softwares. Right? Run simulation, change a few things, run simulation. So anyway, hotkey, auto hotkey. It's a good one. And then APIs. So stands for Application Programming Interface, and I've got the technical definition there. and I've used one example is AutoCAD have an API, but a lot of companies have really good APIs now. They're great in opening up the back end of functions. So again, an anecdote was I was doing a job for Yarra Trams. Across 2 substations, I think had 900 schematics. Okay, so a lot of drawings. And all of it needed to be in their particular drawing format, the Department of Transport or PTV drawing format, with certain fonts, certain table sizes, layers, things like that. So you could go through and you could manually change fonts and make sure they're all in the same font, make sure they're all the same layer, and things like that. But why would you? So I had a script that basically ran across those 900 drawings and put it in the correct format, ready for submission into their drawing management system. And I think it took like 30 minutes to run. And probably it would have saved a week, maybe, week and a half. And that was every time I produced new drawings and had to reformat them again. So anyway, that was a really good example of time saving. So, quick recap, we talked about doing more actual work in the day, and then we talked about 2 specific tips of doing less actual work. And I want to point your attention to the quote here, which I haven't addressed. Now's a good time before Q&A. I won't quote it to the exact lecturer because maybe I haven't got haven't got permission for the quote, but this is my programming lecturer at uni. He said, if you find yourself doing something boring and repetitive on a computer, the computer should be doing it for you. So keep that in mind for doing less actual work. Anyway, I open the floor to Q&A.
I've got a question for you, Jarman. Where can we download the hotkey app or the thing that you're referring to? Are you able to probably send us a link so some of us can sort of get on board? Yep. I
could send the presentation. Should have all the sources and links and everything in the bottom of the presentation. So
yep.
We could do that. And I have my template script if you'd like, and I'm more than happy to share that with you. There's no complex IP or anything in it. And you can start enter your own mobile number instead of mine, things like that.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi Jarman, it's Neil Saddington here.
Hi Neil.
Yeah, hi Jarman. Yeah, thanks very much for that. I enjoyed your presentation a lot. The couple of points that might be worth considering. I observe all over the place that most time is wasted by people not knowing what they're doing, who's doing it, when they're doing it, etc. So the business of investigating your, the process of converting your inputs to the outputs that are required seems to just occupy inordinate amounts of time. So a bit of advice, a suggestion, is that the process assets that your company keeps should really be very well indexed, very easy to access, and should also harp very strongly on the questions of who, what, when, where, why, and how. If any of those things are missing, then time will disappear up up the flue. So, and one of the biggest weaknesses of most assets, most of these process assets, is that it fails to clearly define who. So, a lot of time tends to be spent in just combing back through things that have been missed or that have been lost or that didn't occur in the first place. So that's just something to keep in mind as you do this.
No, it's a very good point. yes, I think because Middleton Group is probably a medium-sized business. It's 49 people now, something like that. So for a while we escaped. You knew who was doing what. But yes, now that we're growing and getting larger and larger, this stuff is getting more and more important. So we use Planner in our organization, and it has some wonderful features where you have one of those Kanban boards for each project, but then you'll get a summary of everything that you need to do across all of those projects, right? Because it's assigned and linked to your Microsoft account. So
Yeah.
although I don't think Plan is perfect, that is something that's really slick about it, is it's linked to your Microsoft account, and it's, you're at middletongroup.com.au is doing that task, right? So yes, I think the tools you can use can really, really help with that. And yeah, it's interesting. Everyone, exactly as you said, you can see that the way that you work is there's a lot of time wasted on finding out who needs to do what, but for other people, the time may be wasted somewhere else. Anyway, thank you. Good discussion point.
Just another suggestion too is that you mentioned the time that gets wasted and the unproductive effort that goes into things like project communications.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
I've kind of had a practice for a long time of putting together a project communication plan that sits at the front end of every project and drives the request for communication. Because we've all been there where somebody, a crisis emerges somewhere, someone asks for information.
Mm-hmm.
A way to address that is to refer back to the communication plan and ask the requester of that information who should have been engaged in the communication plan design and sign off in any case, how this relates to the project communications and where it may be found in the formal documents that are passed and recorded as part of the project documentation. It almost invariably is in there. Someone says to you, give me an update on this, and the project communication plan says there's going to be a weekly project report, project update, then the appropriate thing to do is to refer them to that weekly update. And if there's a need to address and amend the communication plan, the question back to that person is this plan not adequate for our purposes? Do we need to address it?
I would hopefully go even further. So if there was, because we're still talking about this is a transition, right, away from to nirvana of workplace productivity, but we could even do this as a live project plan, right? And certain people have access to that, and they can just see how it's running. So I know it becomes more complicated when you have external people looking in as well, but I mean, for my job, I had my customer, myself, and my subcontractors all looking at the same board. So there wasn't even a question. There wasn't the idea of sending someone an email to say, can I please have an update, just wouldn't make sense because they could just see what was happening at all times. So yes, but I would push you out of your comfort zone even further to try and think, well, how can you completely restructure how progress and tasks are assigned so that email just becomes irrelevant?
Yeah, agreed.
I think we have a question from Jane Jarman on the chat. Jane asks, hi Jarman, can I ask how long have you been employing these different tactics or ideas for, and have you found that is noticeably increased your productivity?
Great question. So I have a lot more tips as well, but I wanted to limit the length of the presentation. These specific ones, the timer, I've been doing since I was in high school, actually. So my parents, they gave me a little stopwatch when I was probably about year 10. It had 4 different modes. That's before I had a laptop. And I would time myself how much I was actually doing work. So they were saying, they made the same point to me. They said, we want you to help you study, but we also want you to get outside and have fun. So I had so many friends, especially during year 12, who they did the same thing that we hear in the workplace. I don't know where my day's gone. I'm exhausted. I feel like I've done, so much study, but I've only got through one chapter of material or something like that. So that was where it really began for me, because I said, no, okay, cool. I've done 4 hours today and I smashed that 4 hours and had regular breaks, and now I can go have fun. So that was kind of where that one started for me. It was very, very early on. I took advantage of that. The other tips have evolved since I've been in the workplace. So, I mean, even at university, you don't really send too many emails. You don't really get bogged down in that, right? You send chats and you have group chats. So it was quite funny. I'm trying to bring organizations back to the communication I tended to have at university, right? Where it was forum-based, community chat-based, all public, that kind of stuff. So I think the other ones evolved of once I hit the workplace, I started basically getting frustrated on spending time doing things I didn't want to do. And then I basically had to reshape the work environment around me. So I would probably say once I got the confidence, maybe after working for about 2 years or something, I started to implement a lot of these things in the teams I worked in. Yep. And has it made it more productive? Oh God, yes. Yeah, my God, yeah. Now that I work on a stopwatch, it is remarkable. Again, I applaud you. I think everyone should try it. And yes, some of the things I've implemented at Middleton Group. A classic one I've got training on today is our CRM tool, right? So, I mean, people use Salesforce or anything like that, but we no longer really have people asking questions like, what's the price of that tender that's going out? That's an irrelevant question now because they can just click it and find out. Okay, so yes, there's massive, massive savings. Yep.
Thanks, John. I think Liam has a question.
Hey, Liam. I can see. I think you're muted. Maybe. Not yet. I can't hear you.
That was awkward. You should be able to hear me now.
There we go. Yep, I can hear you. How you going, man?
Morning, mate. Nice to see you. Thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I know you said a lot of this stuff was low-hanging fruit, but I actually think there's some really good golden nuggets there this morning, which not only to use in professional life, but also personal life as well. So
yeah,
thank you for that. The question that I had is, I know you mentioned at the start that you have quite a number of quirks which you like to use in your daily mantra. I just wondered whether or not you could share maybe your best one, or another one which you might think might be beneficial to us all, and it even might serve as a segue into another masterclass later down the track.
Very good one. So I think a classic quirk that makes people feel a bit uncomfortable is, say I'm working in my zone, and I have a stopwatch, it's counting me, right? And someone taps me on the shoulder and they see the stopwatch be paused. Now, if they don't know how I work, it basically makes them feel like they're on the clock, right? So that's a classic quirk. All right. So if people haven't worked with me before, that might seem pretty strange.
I like it.
Yeah. It'd be funny if I started another stopwatch then on that one to time the conversation, right?
I think that's even better, actually.
Yeah. So yes, that's probably a good example of a quirk. I'm trying to think. I tried as hard as I could to include the best ones here. One I didn't include, which I think is very useful. Again, low-hanging fruit. You may have already done it. Is how I structure my inbox. So as much as I hate emails, there's a place for them, right? They are time synchronous communication. They are legally binding, right? So there's great examples where you need to use email, sending an offer, right? That shouldn't be a chat. So emails aren't going anywhere. I'm just promoting their lesser percentage of communication. But so when I do receive an email in my inbox, I don't have 1,000 things in my inbox. My inbox is things that I haven't actioned, okay? And then I have a very detailed filing system. So by project, code, things like that. So whenever I receive an email that asks me to do something, if I haven't done it, I don't remove it from my inbox. Once I've done it, I remove it. Or if there's nothing for me to do, I then remove it. When I say remove it, I mean file. And the same thing, if I send an email to someone, okay, I pull that out of my sent items and I put it in my inbox. So what's this now? My inbox is now basically a snapshot of all the communication of things that I need to do or things I need from someone. So then on a daily basis, in my inbox, that means there might be somewhere hopefully between 10 and 20 items is a kind of a healthy amount, right? I'm not behind because that's of things I need to do or things I'm waiting on from someone else. So then if I can do at the end of each day, I do a quick scan, or sometimes during the day, I do a quick scan of say these 10, 15 items, and I just check, right? So check if they need to be actioned. So I go, oh crap, yeah, I didn't send a response on that, and I now have the information, I can send that response. It's a classic one. Or I sent this to someone a week ago, and I haven't got anything. Okay, well, I need to follow that up, file the old sent email, get the new sent email, and put that in my inbox, right? So it's really, really important for things like receiving inputs for a project. You really have to stay on top of communication, making sure you're getting all the information you need, for the next 2 weeks of work or something. So I would say that's a very, very useful one for me.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We might close the session there. If you have any more questions, please send your questions to us via LinkedIn, via emails. I think you should have a few of our contact numbers, and we can direct them to Jarman if you like. And we'd like to thank you all again for joining us today. We hope Jarman's session brought you a new perspective on productivity, as he always does to many of us in the office. Can I just please request everyone to take just a moment just to complete the survey which is in the chat. It would really help us a lot with future sessions that we bring to you. And with that, I'd like to conclude the session by asking everyone to just stay safe, wash your hands, and have a great weekend. Thank you.
See you later.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Jarman.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jarman. Great work.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, mate.
See ya.
Thanks, Jarman.
See you later.
See ya.